Hi, everybody, and welcome back. I'm so excited to bring today's guest onto my channel. It's the health and performance coach, Krisna Hanks. Krisna is an inspiration and a thought leader in the world of health coaching. From her background in a small Midwestern town in the USA, growing up in a basketball coaching family, she decided not to study sport, but instead went into the highly disciplined and competitive world of professional dance and launched a successful professional dancing career spanning the globe. But it was her never-ending drive to always be better and strive to grow and transform, which then led to learning and studying to become arguably one of the most highly qualified health and performance coaches practicing today, studying with Tim Noakes. In addition to all this, Krisna has studied kinesiology at university and is also qualified to teach yoga and Pilates. Krisna, that is a lot of studying. You're so welcome onto my channel. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Well, thank you for that fabulous introduction. And I'm honored to be on your program. So, yes,
Thank you.
share
Thank
my
you.
experiences and whatever we can find to have some good conversation on.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to it. So just to get going now, can you just tell us a little bit about your background, about growing up in a coaching family, and whether or not maybe the discipline that you just kind of picked up on there has helped you throughout your dancing career, perhaps?
Absolutely. So, yes, as you said, I grew up in a small town in Illinois where my dad was the basketball coach and athletic director. And as a side note, my brother became a basketball coach for many decades, also very successful. He's no longer doing that, but definitely a lot of sport around, and basketball was king in our city. Lots of people in the stadium. And watching that certainly had a great influence on me in terms of how you put teams together, how you work with individuals, some with lots of talent, some with not so much, but lots of drive and dedication, how you make people themselves as individuals want to be successful and be the best they can be, as well as a team. So that definitely kickstarted my insight into that, and watching both the challenges as well as the hard pieces of that, of any sort of top sport. I think I by osmosis put that into myself when I became passionate about wanting to be a dancer. According to my mom, even at the age of 3 or 4, when she asked me what I wanted to be, I already knew I wanted to be a dancer. And that did come to fruition. I had quite a long career, around 33, 34 years.
Wow.
Doing that. I started actually doing that at the age of 15 and then carried it on to mid 40s, which is pretty long in terms of a dancer.
It is, yes.
And I think anytime you can be around a good coach that people really are inspired to want to work with, that's going to be influential. And it just happened to be my dad.
Good. So, so can you just tell us about your life as a dancer and maybe the type of food that you were eating and perhaps the struggles that eventually led to?
Great question. Great question. So tying it a little bit back to where we started in terms of how I grew up in a Midwestern family. My mom was, I like to call her the CEO of our house. She, and sometimes you would call that a stay-at-home mom. But there's a lot of work involved in that. But she cooked primarily most of our food. We were definitely a low to middle income family. So there wasn't a lot at that time of eating out or packaged or processed foods. So we were eating meat and vegetables and lots of good stuff. She was very creative on a budget. So I grew up with that. And then, you know, being involved in the dance world is very, let's say, interesting when it comes to nutrition, because we're very body obsessed. So there can be a lot of negative tangents where people have struggles, whether it's eating disorders or different things in that idea of trying to be thin, as we would say. So I witnessed that. I saw that. I was not part of that. Again, my family is very basic and traditional and very helpful in that. But later on in my dance career, and more particularly, you know, towards kind of the middle part of that career, I was very interested, and there was a lot of push around different places to think that the vegetarian lifestyle was the lifestyle to not only stay healthy, but keep your weight under control. And again, that kind of dancer mindset that everything revolves around that. I've grown out of that mindset, that understanding there's way, way more than the scale when it
Course.
comes to our health.
Mm.
Luckily, learned a lot along the way.
Yes, yes.
However, I participated in that vegetarian lifestyle for, you know, close to 20 years, until finally, via not only just health issues that I was encountering, and we can talk about that, particularly joint tissue mobility issues that were becoming very restricted at what I considered then a young age, mid, you know, early 40s. And that changed my perspective on that dramatically to the better. But I think many women probably, maybe not so intensely, if particularly if they did not participate in professional dance or professional sports, where weight can kind of be a heavy factor to understand, comprehend, and figure out your own way of working with that.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I think it must have been very easy for you to fall into that way of eating non-meat, quite simply because that's what everybody else was doing. So I suppose it comes down to a little bit of peer pressure, as you say, because you wanted to have the sort of figure that you needed to, well, basically to get work, really, to do the work that you felt so passionate about. And I think, you know, there has been times when we've all thought, because I've done the same thing myself, when I've gone vegetarian, because I've thought that it was the healthiest way to eat. I genuinely believed that it was the healthiest way to eat. Now, of course, as you say, now we know differently. Now, you know, we do know differently, which sort of brings me on to my next question, which is why healthy eating in the modern world has become so complicated. What are your thoughts on that?
That's probably the $100,000 question or $100 million question, right? I think it's become complicated for many reasons. And I just want to say one side note. I think as women, it's also important for us to recognize that maybe something that worked for us in our 20s, 30s, and 40s may not work for us when we're in our 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond. And I think sometimes we have to face that music because of health issues that are demonstrating themselves, hormonal issues. I think the openness and willingness to change is very important, and to have some individuals maybe who can help you to break beyond the peer pressure, the stigma, or the just overwhelming amount of information that individuals have to deal with in order to find their own individual nutritional path. Right. So
Yes,
sorry for
yes.
that little side jump
No,
there,
no,
but
no, no, totally. Yeah. I mean, you know,
um,
totally, because I think it's important to look at everybody in context, really, as in age and what their background is and how they have been eating. So it's all, you know, very important factors that need to be taken into account, definitely.
absolutely. So back to your question about why has it become so challenging? I think we have One, I'll start with here in the US, and I think sadly we've exported that globally, has to do with the institution of the US nutritional dietary guidelines that first came to fruition in 1977, which basically put the recommendations for nutritional sources into that neighborhood of 55 to 65% of your calories should be carbohydrates. I think that was a major mistake. I think it was founded on very, very weak evidence. Maybe some would say no scientific
Yes.
evidence. And I think
Mm.
that experiment in the global population has just been a disaster.
But a disaster, I agree. Yes.
So that is one piece of why it's complicated right now. A second piece, I think, why it's complicated is we have to deal with large, very deep pocketed companies and corporations selling food, what I call food like products. They are not real food, but they are products. And they have just overwhelmed the market, right? And they sadly can hijack people's interpretation with their labels like healthy. And they even put in that bucket now keto, right? Keto products, you know, are also the rage in that way. And they just have so much influence starting at very young. I think one of the most interesting individuals in the US is Dr. Robert Lustig, who's a
Yes.
pediatric endocrinologist from University of California, San Francisco. He is, you know, witnessing children in these young ages, 7, below even 10 years of age, with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And
Absolutely. It's appalling.
he is
Mm.
appalling. And he shows within weeks, I think he's even saying 21 days from just eliminating processed
Mm.
food, he shows dramatic improvement. So that just highlights the power and the influence that these companies have on our nutritional choices.
Yes.
Um, and I think, you know, as wonderful it is that you and I get to have this conversation, we met via the social media connections. The internet is a challenge, right? Because there's a lot of forces behind what, even if I Google healthy diet, I'm going to get a lot,
Yes.
maybe a lot of information that's not exactly healthy. And for me, that would be a whole foods diet. I don't care if you're,
Yes.
you know, carnivore, low carb, keto. If you're trying to do vegetarian, I hope you have some assistance in doing that via with maybe good supplementation. But it's whole foods. Whatever diet you follow needs to be
Yes.
a whole foods diet.
Yes. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. I think one of the real stumbling blocks is that people assume, and I know because I've done this myself, before I started low carb and keto, which was about 12 years ago now, but when I went into the supermarket, I just assumed that everything that was for sale in a supermarket must be okay to eat, because otherwise, why would it be for sale there? So, and I think everybody, or, a lot of people who don't have the opportunity maybe to actually find out for themselves that what is really going on with ultra processed foods, or at least not the problems with not eating real food, they just assume that because it's up for sale that the government must have okayed this as being good for us. And I don't know how on earth we're ever going to get around that, really.
I don't know. You know, as a health coach, I definitely advise people to shop the periphery, right? That
Yes.
because that's where you have your meat counter, your fish counter, your
Yeah.
fruits and vegetables, your dairy, and then you can go check out.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
in
Get the hell out of there.
exactly, because the middle is anything that's a box
Yeah.
that has a long shelf life, that's in a package
Mm.
with potentially a long list of ingredients. So
Yes.
if you can make a circular path that's probably a
Yes.
winning path,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. But it sort of brings me nicely onto the next topic I want to discuss, which is what is healthy eating? I think there there just seems to be, if I spoke to 10 different people, they'd probably come out with 10 different answers. And yet I think that healthy eating is actually a very simple way of eating, but I don't know why we've complicated it so much. So what, in your opinion, is healthy eating? Or what are healthy foods?
Again, fabulous question. I think first and foremost, it means eating whole foods. Those
Mm,
ingredients with minimal, or those foods with that, if my grandmother saw it or great grandmother saw it, they would know what it is.
yeah,
In that way, it has minimal ingredients. I think healthy eating is having meals, not snacks, and that might not be a very popular opinion because we become via the product corporation food like product makers to think we need to eat all day long and we should be snacking all day long.
yes.
And I love I don't know if you've read any of Zoe Harcob.
Oh, yes. Yeah, she's
Love
brilliant.
Zoe's work.
Yeah.
She says,
Mm.
unless you want to be the size of a cow, why would you want to be grazing all day long?
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
uh,
Yes.
and I think the, trying to make it simple is realizing that we need to be educated and attuned what is
Mm,
beneficial from a blood sugar and insulin standpoint, i.e., good metabolic health. Right? Of
yeah,
the three macronutrients of protein, carbohydrates, and fat, we know carbohydrates and sugar have that quick impact and that quick drop off
absolutely.
on our blood
Um,
sugar and thus insulin.
yes.
And you need to understand, maybe in the words of Gary Taubes, what is your carbohydrate tolerance?
Mm,
And that might even be going and making complicated. But let's say if you start with whole foods and you start by trying to focus on meals, you're way ahead of the pack.
absolutely. Absolutely, yes. I agree. I agree. And can you just talk for a second about the importance of protein and why we should be focusing on protein, and especially for women, sort of over menopause age, why protein is so incredibly important?
Favorite topic of mine, by the way, because I myself, I think that was, just as a little aside, I think towards the end of my vegetarian that I think I, without anybody telling me, was either pre-diabetic or really close to that edge of that.
Yeah.
Because
Mm,
when I had taken the meat out, I had put all kinds of carbohydrates in there, rice, bread, pasta, because I needed energy. It was quick energy. Um, I think why protein is so important, especially for women, as we age, just naturally through the aging process, we lose muscle mass,
mm,
right? It takes effort. There's two ways to build money, through nutrition and exercise. And we seem to understand the exercise piece. I would say we need to do a little more strength training, but we don't seem to comprehend fully the protein piece, because we've got a lot of women over the ages, I think even now in the 40s and 45, who are deficient in
mm,
protein. We see a lot of osteoporosis, osteopenia, so our bones are not doing well as we age.
mm,
We
mm.
see also a lot of sarcopenia, right? Muscle
Absolutely,
wasting.
yes.
So that requires in effort and attention, in my book, to protein. And I feel just because of the variance in the bioavailability, that animal protein and plant protein are not on a one-to-one,
Oh, mm.
right? Because our body, because of this bioavailability thing. And I just feel that animal products give us our biggest bang for buck.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I do, I really do tend to see, I don't know what it's like over in the States, but over in the UK, I feel that as a woman gets beyond her menopause, it's almost as if she automatically thinks she has to reduce the amount of meat that she's eating, reduce the amount of protein, because we seem to have had it drummed into us that protein, particularly red meat, is really bad for us. And so therefore, if we move on to plant protein, that's going to be a much better choice. But that's wrong, isn't it?
In my book, it's not an aging strategy.
No.
I feel it's a strategy towards frailty.
Mm.
And we see that when we see higher incidence of hip fractures within the vegetarian vegan community. And
Mm.
we see it also with their lower rates of, or rather, higher rates of vitamin deficiencies as well, unless they're just diligently supplementing. And then that's a whole other conversation. Are we
Mm.
actually really absorbing, these artificial supplementations and being able to utilize them? I think it also goes what you maybe sort of touch on just a little bit, this idea that women still are very obsessed about calories.
Yes.
Right? And protein might have more calories.
Mm.
Therefore, if I skimp a little bit on my protein, I
Mm.
cut down on my calorie intake, then therefore they think I'm winning.
Yes.
And
Yes, I agree.
that's actually sad, I think, because then
Mm.
you're undermining your own health and your own ability to age with strength.
Yes, exactly. And when I pick up a women's health um, magazine, I just feel like it supports the lower meat way of eating. And I think a lot of women are buying those magazines thinking that they're doing the right thing, that of course, it's a specialist magazine. So it's going to contain all the information that they need as they're going through menopause and beyond. But actually, it's telling them the wrong information. And again, when it comes down to the food that's being sold, I just don't know how we're going to get beyond that, because it just seems that that is everywhere. It just seems that message about eating lower amounts of protein seems to be everywhere.
I agree. And then we have to always look at those magazines or those media sources as who's actually funding them. And we
Yes, that's a
know
good
of the big
point.
product companies behind the media, behind any printed materials, they're a major driving force
Yeah.
in that. And again, in my opinion, when you push people towards food products and away from whole foods, you are undermining their health.
Yes.
This is a kind of funny. I try to coach my clients, particularly the older ones, is I'm not sure if this is true in the UK, but a lot of women, when let's say if you're going out to eat, they'll eat everything around the plate. They'll have the salad, they'll have the veggie, and they sort of go to the protein last. And then maybe by the time they get to that protein, they're actually kind of full,
Kind of
and they might
full,
end up
yes.
leaving half the protein on the
Mm,
plate.
mm,
My strategy is prioritize that protein. Let's go the reverse of that. Let's go for that protein
I
first,
think that's right.
right? And try to get a really good and hopefully all of it, and then
Yes.
enjoy those other things.
Absolutely. I think that's such a brilliant idea. I think that's a fantastic strategy, and I wish more people would take that up. And I think certainly once you start to eat protein and once your body realizes that it is going to get nourished, you you just begin to love it, don't you? And your body craves it. This is what I've definitely found anyway.
Most definitely. And I think also for, you know, women, and I don't mean to just only talk about, because
No.
I definitely, both men and women come, but
Mm,
women in particular, I think also need to think about what we call things that are the non-scale components. And we even talk about non-scale victories. That would
mm.
be things like your energy. I think protein, it's pretty amazing, your energy
Absolutely.
level, right?
Yes.
And how much more efficient your workouts are.
Mm,
Satiety, right? Actually, I mean, I can remember in my vegetarian days, in that area around, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., what
mm,
you in the
mm.
UK might call tea time,
Yes.
I would be hangry, right? It's like, what's my next thing I'm going to eat? I'm
Yes.
really can't even make it to dinner.
Mm,
You don't have that
mm.
when you're getting adequate
No, you
protein
don't. You don't at
or
all.
following a whole foods diet. So
Absolutely.
energy, satiety, mood.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think protein really helps us stabilize our mood because it's like having a strong foundation.
Yes, it
And
is.
you know, I think it's a key component of contributing to good metabolic health.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. And I think it's sad in a way that women, a lot of women think they're doing the right thing by reducing protein, but in actual fact, if they were to increase protein, they would get the results that they wanted. They would lose weight. They wouldn't snack between meals. They wouldn't be drawn to eating the high carbohydrate snacks or the highly processed foods, and they would feel so much better. They would feel so much better. And also I do think that it also comes down to the anti-inflammatory aspect, which you've just mentioned as well, because an awful lot of people are, their bodies are so inflamed, aren't they, that eat that they want to become healthier, but they're just going about it. They think they're going about it in the right way, but in actual fact, the messages that they've been given are completely wrong. So what is the best anti-inflammatory way of eating?
Well, in my book, and I did that 20 years self-exploration, and I'm continuing on. As you know, I'm not shy about my age. I'm 66.
Wow, you look
um,
incredible, incredible for
Thank
66.
you. Um, I think the first step in trying to deal with inflammation is, as I mentioned, follow a whole foods diet.
Yes,
I think almost equal to that, and I see as a really big piece is eliminating the seed oils from your diet.
yes.
And whether you call them seed oils
Mm,
or, you know, vegetable oils, although there are
mm.
hardly any vegetables to it,
Yeah.
right? But they're highly processed, highly inflammatory, and I just see nothing good of it. But again, then we
Mm,
go to this advertising conversation where we kind of kicked it off of everywhere you go, you know, they're displayed as golden, heart healthy,
oh,
whether you're talking about soy oil, canola oil, corn oil, and they're
mm,
cheap. So I think that is whole foods diet, eliminating the seed oils are two kind of the major pieces of a low inflammatory diet, and making sure you
yes.
get adequate
Yes,
protein
I
and
agree.
fat.
And I think the other thing that is the other point that is worth stressing here maybe is that I don't know of any woman who doesn't want a flatter belly. And carbohydrates, they give you that puffy belly, don't they? So I know so many women, or I know women who've gone on to whether it's keto or carnivore. I think they can't believe how flat their stomach has become because they're not eating those carbohydrates anymore.
That's right. And then that comes back to why it's a good thing to monitor the 5 markers of metabolic health, because the first one on there is your waist circumference.
Yes.
And when you start following a more whole foods, meal-based diet without all these, what I would call blood sugar interruptions, or as Zoe says, constant grazing,
Yeah.
uh, you're going to see that natural reduction in the carbohydrate and sugar
Of
intake.
course. Yes.
Um,
Yes, definitely. So I just want to touch quickly because I'm very
yeah,
aware of the time. I just want to touch quickly on movement because you do talk a lot about not only exercise but actually how important movement is during our day. So can you talk a little bit about that?
absolutely. So, like, I've had a lot of movement in my background, but I also just love it. I think what I first want to caveat from trying to be a promoter of healthy aging and aging with strength is we need to move away from that. Movement is a form of losing weight. I
Yes.
like to say, exercise to exercise, not to lose weight. It is not a calories in, calories out question. I hope one day we can throw that phrase in the trash. It's movement is about keeping your body independent and mobile throughout the aging process. I think part of that is finding movement that you like. I know Dr. Brian Linsky's in internal medicine in California says when people ask him what's the best type of movement, he says the one you'll do.
Yes.
But
Yes.
even more in the nitty gritty is I think it's important to do strength training as we age.
Yes.
What we talked
Yes.
about from the osteoporosis, osteopenia,
Yes.
challenging your muscles from a strength training
Of
standpoint.
course.
I think
Yeah.
movement must involve some time outside, just like
Yes.
you and I are doing right now, which I
Yeah.
love. Is
Absolutely.
we're inside, we're on Zoom, anything that gets you outdoors, if that's walking,
Yes.
if that's hiking, if that's swimming outdoors, or
Yes.
anything, cycling that gets you in the outdoors is
Yeah.
great.
And I think particularly when the sun is out, I think when the sun is out, we should all be making the effort to get outside, even if it's just for 10 or 20 minutes. It makes such a massive difference to our health.
Absolutely. Again, look at the numbers. The large populations are vitamin D deficient. And I know that's more challenging in Northern Europe. Certainly, having
Mm.
lived a long time in the Netherlands and lived also in London for a little bit, that it's hard to get the sun in the winter. So you really have to
Yeah.
stock up your vitamin D bank in the summer.
Yes, I mean, we had a day a few days ago when the sun came out. And I just said to everybody, right, that's it. I said, I'm actually going out for a walk now. I'm not letting this sunshine go to waste. I'm getting out there and I'm gonna get out for a walk. And I felt so much better afterwards as well. It's incredible. But sunshine really does help. It really does make you feel better, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, all the research is showing, that those benefits from the nitric oxide, very similar to exercise,
Yes.
similar to some of the utilization of sauna as a heat therapy. But yeah, I always say
Yes.
get outside as much as you can.
Yes, definitely. So, Krisna, we have to wrap this up now. And do you know what? I feel like I could talk to you forever because I just think you're so interesting and such a vast pool of knowledge there. Thank you so much for coming onto my channel, for chatting with me today. I have so enjoyed it. Thank you, thank you. And where can people find you?
Absolutely. So my website, along with my husband, who's a fabulous health coach himself, is Square One Wellness, and one the number.
Okay.
Okay. And that idea of bring it back to square one, let's make it simple and easy to do. I'm also on LinkedIn with Krisna Hanks. I'm on Twitter at Square One Wellness also, and the same on Instagram.
Thanks,
Yes.
Krisna. Bye now.